We're going to jump right into our panel discussion for brokers. We're just miking them up right now. And shouldn't be much of a delay here. So if I could have the panelists come forward, please, and gather on at the front here.
All right.
I want to compliment the Hyatt on their air conditioning system. We have treatments for hypothermia just outside the door here.
How is it?
A very famous charter broker in the business said this: whether you own a yacht or charter one, the stories that come from that experience are phenomenal. Do you know who said that? Barbara Dawson said that. Okay. Barbara couldn't be here with us today, but we're going to talk about some stories of things that have happened in situations in the charter business. And the format here is to use these experts that we have, introducing to my immediate left, Diane Brody from Camper Nicholson's International. She's from New Jersey, spent a lot of time on the Jersey Shore. And she says back in those yachts when a mega yacht, as I alluded earlier, were over 100 feet. It's 25 years she's been with Camper Nicholson's. That could be a record.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then next we have Ann Landry of Northrop & Johnson. She hails from New Orleans. Ann and I have had the opportunity to work together. She had her own experiences working on yachts, sailboats in the Virgin Islands, some good practical experience as a co-captain, chef, yacht chartering. And then Pat Codere, Fraser Yachts. She joined Fraser's in 2002 as a charter marketing agent, has graduated to head of their charter management division in the USA, still and managing her own fleet of yachts while managing the division as well. And she beats my tail in racquetball on a regular basis. I don't even want to play her anymore. Starting to get to my ego a little bit. So we have these experts here, and what we did at the Charter Professional Committee level was we explored some situations that have occurred that, from those of you that are experienced here, you'll be familiar with these situations, and those of you that are newer to the industry can use these situations as a basis for disputes that might arise for you in the future and so on and so forth. The idea is to describe these scenarios and then to try to figure out what was the germ of the problem, where were the mistakes made, and what should have been done in that basis. So I have some situations here. We have 43 minutes now. We're probably not going to get all the way through these things, but I also want you to think in terms of questions that you might have as we discuss these things, and also maybe some brief scenarios that you could describe to us that have happened to you when you've been organizing charters and you've hit some rough spots or from some snafus, as often can happen. Because the role of the charter manager and the charter broker, a charter manager, as you've heard me say many times, is one of the toughest jobs in the business because they're dealing with charter brokers. That doesn't mean the charter brokers are tough, but they've got the client, they've got their client, the owner of the boat. They've got the charter broker with their client. So in effect, charter managers are like brokers because they're trying to broker the best position for their owner. And then you have the captain in the middle. And so you have all these personalities, and we wish the industry was more precise. We wish it was as easy as going online and booking a room on a cruise ship, cabin on a cruise ship. But it's not that way because so much is personalized and so much is customized as we do these charter events. So I'm going to just jump right into one now. And I'm going to lean on the panel here for their opinions on what happened. And one involves, for example, as an example, last-minute charters. Can you relate to that? Right? Last-minute charters, 48 hours prior to start. Contract is in process. Funds confirmation are required before the contract is signed. The only way that would happen. And confirmation does not come less than 24 hours before the charter. The owner is not willing to front provisioning, the dockage, leaving the dock without this and decides not to sign. The broker is furious. Whose fault is it? What happened? Would anybody like to comment on that, please?
As a manager?
Yes, as a manager.
As a manager, the money should have come in before even the contracts. If it's that close to the timing, the money comes the same time as the contracts. The boat's not leaving the dock, the provisioning's not getting done, nothing's happening without the money. So in this case, the money has to be at the same time as the contracts. Okay. It can be in the broker's account, that's fine. But as long as we know it's there, then we can proceed.
So if it's in the broker's account, then it is sufficient evidence.
For me, yeah.
Start. Okay. Any others, from a brokerage standpoint?
I have to agree with that.
I agree with it wholeheartedly. There's no reason an owner should have to pay for somebody to charter his boat.
This happens so often on these last-minute charters. I don't know what it is. It seems like there are so many last-minute charters these days, though.
But
And-
these
and-
days with the banking systems, because I had one and there was a charter manager who, it was a Friday morning, I got the inquiry. By Friday afternoon, we had funds and the charter contract was signed. The banking systems today do allow for very, very quick transfers, and most of the clients...
Except for Russia.
Except for Russia, okay. But most of the clients do have like in-house personal bankers that can expedite this
Right.
kind of thing.
So that's sort of a matter of, it's an issue, but it's an issue should be easily solved, and if it's not solved by banking, expeditious banking and all that, then the problem probably lies elsewhere, okay? Might not have been a legitimate charter in the first place. Let's get into fuel charges. So here's a very interesting one. The boat is fueled with U.S. per gallon rates. And if I'm not mistaken, we like to start the charters off fueled up, and then as fuel is depleted or at the end of the charter, then the charter client can pull the card out and pay for the fuel. In this case, the boat is fueled with U.S. dollar per gallon fuel rates. The charter takes place for 2 weeks in the Bahamas. So far, so good. Captain charges cruising fuel at the U.S. per rate, dollar per rate, gallon per rate, but must refuel and refill in the Bahamas per gallon rate, which is much higher, as we know, in the Bahamas. Okay, here's where the problem lies. The owner feels that this higher cost should be the cruising charge to the charterer to replace the fuel that is used. Logically, the owner seems correct, and the industry has been standard to charge cost at an original bunker point. But how would our charter client feel about that?
Well, my question is, was delivery fee paid? Because basically, if the boat bunkered in U.S. waters, then there was a delivery to the Bahamas, so delivery fee was probably paid. In that case, I would say you're running on U.S. fuel, and that's what the charterer pays. But I see the owner's point, but nonetheless, unless it were mentioned specifically in the contract that replacement, that fuel for the charterer will be at Bahamian fuel rates. If that was mentioned in the contract, then the owner has a leg to stand on. Otherwise, I don't think he does.
Anybody out here had this happen to them on a charter? And how did you handle it, Daphne?
It was negotiated at the end, but the boat was in fact empty. They had to refill at the end of the charter, and the owner had no other charter, no other use after that point, and fought it and said, I wouldn't otherwise be spending Bahamas prices on fuel. I filled my boat. They need to refill my boat. It's a replacement fee. So that's how he put it to them, and they seemed to understand at the end. They were very happy, and we were able to get through the whole thing. But it was kind of the first time it had come up, surprisingly, in all these years, and it made sense to me that the owner had a legitimate cause of asking, why am I not getting a replacement cost of my fuel? I want my tank full by the time I get it back, or the same as it was when they got aboard. So, and the delivery had nothing to do with it. In fact, this one didn't have a delivery, but even if there was delivery, that has nothing to do with the actual cruising fuel used during the charter, if it got emptied.
So you negotiated, where did the negotiations go then?
So we took the high rate of Bahamas, the lower
Split the difference.
price of the U.S. fuel, and they were okay with splitting the difference.
Okay.
It was a 2-week charter, so that's really why I think we were able to do that. If it was a shorter charter, I'm not sure, but obviously it's on my radar now.
Okay. Thanks, Stephanie. Any comments?
It doesn't happen often. I've had it once in my whole career.
Yeah. What about the situation where a boat provisions up on its own and uses their stores where the charter client submits a preference sheet, and some of the things that they have in ship stores, such as wines and such, are marked up? Is it ordinary to mark these things up and charge surcharge for as part of the charter client's consumables?
Shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be.
No.
Should be at cost.
At cost.
But have you not experienced that where the yacht wants to mark it up? Wine in particular. You know, they buy it for a third of what it sells in the restaurant. Restaurant charges 300%. And I've seen situations where the yacht says, well, for the trouble of us already having it on board, that we're going to mark it up in charge of like a hotel rate.
I've never had that.
I've never had that either.
Okay, good. All right, moving along. Here's another good one here. This involves kosher food. No preference sheets or missing details, and the example gives as an example kosher. The yacht is in a remote part of the world and must order plan well in advance without preference sheets. The charter is at risk for falling apart if the food order is not accurate or diet not met. Should we have a condition included for timely return of preference sheets or no guarantees? Who takes the responsibility for at that point for disappointed clients? You're jumping on that one.
I can jump on, whoops, sorry. A lot of times, even in remote areas, remote destinations, it's not that difficult unless somebody has really extreme food allergies to provision a boat. That's what I have found, even for kosher or kosher style. But ultimately, it's the client's fault if they're not giving you a preference sheet and they have food allergies, food sensitivities, strict dietary restrictions. That is the client's fault, but some of it also, I think, is part of a charter broker's responsibility for knowing their client. You're going to put them in a remote area. You should know what this client, what the charterer is going to want and what they're going to need.
Well, unless they're a new client or unless it's a client who has different guests every time. But basically, you know, I think it's my job to do everything I can to get that preference. In other words, I'll say, okay, look, if you don't want to fill this out, give me a call. I will take your preferences down by dictation. You know, and if that doesn't work, I say, well, look, the chef knows. You got 12 people aboard. The chef knows how many dozen eggs to buy, how much butter, how much blah, blah, blah. So they can provision, but it may not be what you want. And we want to customize this vacation specifically for you. So can you please tell me what you want to eat and drink?
I agree. The broker has to get it. As Milton says, form that relationship, and if it has meaning getting the preferences, then you need to do it, because the boats are stuck there. They could say they don't eat meat, and they show up and they want a hamburger. I mean, you really need to find out what they like.
Yeah, but there should not be a requirement in the contract for preference sheets.
No.
I mean, that's way complicated.
It is. And plus, I think we also find, at least I have found in the past, that clients will say strictly kosher, strictly kosher. They get to the country, and before they get on the boat, we need to go to the grocery store and get bacon.
Yeah. We don't drink. Where's the wine?
We don't eat desserts, right?
Bob, we have a question over here.
Yes. Would you stand, please, so we can see you?
Okay, so as a charter broker, what will be the timeline to get those preference sheets back?
I try to get it 4 to 6 weeks. I tell them 4 to 6 weeks prior to charter. I aim for that, and I follow up a couple of times after sending it. How you coming? How you doing? Yeah. You know, can we get this in?
It should be part of the initial conversation, right. I think. Mm-hmm. When they're booking a charter, this is how your vacation is going to be, and it's going to be catered to you, so you need to tell us what you like to eat and what you don't like to eat. If your allergies, is there a birthday, is there an occasion?
What happens once you get the preference sheets back and down the line, before the charter starts, he decides to eat the bacon or something that is not kosher or gluten-free or whatever, he wants to make a change in the preference?
As soon as possible. Get it in.
When you once receive the preference sheet, mm-hmm. between receiving the preference sheet and getting on board, and getting on the boat.
And are you saying it changes, the preference change?
And they're not on board yet? Mm-hmm. Well, it gives the crew time to get what they need.
Okay.
But if they come on board and their preferences change on board, then it can't be at the fault of the crew or anything like that. It's just simply a lapse in communications is all it is. So the crew and the yacht can't be responsible in that situation. There's another question over on this side.
It's not really a question, but I can tell you that your preference sheets are the crews, especially the chefs, essential. It's their contract that protects them from clients that come on board and say, well, we said this or we said that or we expected this. And I had the supreme example of this, Ed, Bob, you remember this boat 15 years ago, and we had some very high-end guests that were aboard who only flew into Barbados on the Concorde to have their holiday charter. And I had 18 pages as the charter chef of preference sheets. And all of a sudden, on our New Year's dinner, the charter almost came, a 2-week charter almost came to a roaring halt because there was no white asparagus. And the charter missus was having an all-out hissy fit. And I was going through pages and pages going, we're in Barbados. There's women with no teeth sitting on the sidewalk with gunny sacks. There's no white asparagus for you. You're just gonna have to get over it. And it was like this, I mean, there was a call to the owner, there was gonna be a halt in the charter. They were talking about wanting to, count the amount of days that they had spent, be prorated and be put off the boat because there was no white asparagus. So if I hadn't had those preference sheets and we went line by line, 18 pages to go, sorry, no white asparagus request here, we would have possibly been in a really, sticky situation with having to refund money and prorate and put them off, earlier than their charter was supposed to be finished.
White asparagus.
White
It's really,
asparagus.
everything almost came to.
Remind me, how was it resolved?
They ate the green.
How was that resolved? I just don't.
There was no white asparagus in the preference sheet, therefore the client had unrealistic expectations. If white asparagus was the pinnacle point of their New Year's Eve meal, they should have put it down in the preference sheets. And it kept us all from, it was ugly.
I mean, they threatened to cancel and all that, but
Yeah.
I think at that point, if it's not in the preference sheet, it's what can be reasonably expected.
Exactly, but the reasonable was not part of that client's makeup.
Preference sheets aren't always that.
No, they're not.
The number of times of whims and eccentricities and idiosyncrasies of charter clients over the years is like so numerous I can't even begin to get into it. Like at macadamia nuts I was talking about earlier, they got a first-class seat on the airplane. So, okay, so let's talk about, give me your definition. From a brokerage standpoint, what is a challenge to an offer?
We have to define offer, I think.
Define offer, because we just heard a different definition than what we've all were discussing.
Okay. You want me to define an offer?
Well, I can remember a certain charter manager who used to say, send me a signed contract, that's your offer. I think we all know who that is.
Sounds very familiar, yes.
Yeah, sounds familiar.
And that's what we just learned.
You put the client's offer in, and basically you expect that the owner's going to respond within 48 hours, I would say, huh? Mm-hmm. Something like that. And this is really, really tough. If a second offer comes in, what's the charter manager supposed to do? And it's a better offer. Mm-hmm. I don't really know that there's a ironclad rule about this.
There is no ironclad rule, and I think by offer we're not saying a signed agreement. An offer is charter is saying, okay, I will take 10 days at $10,000, which is 50% off of the price, and then another offer comes in. But even offer number one, there's no guarantee that that person is going to go to contract if the owner does accept the offer, because that guy might be a total flake and wishy-washy. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different variables when you're saying challenging an offer. And then also when it comes to Christmas and New Year's, I think that's pretty much off the table. It's whoever comes in with the signed contract and the money first.
But your offer could say, client will sign if accepted. If the offer is presented that way, I think that gives it more weight to that offer number one.
Yeah, but we've heard that so many times.
Yeah, well,
And
it's got to be
how many
real. It's
offers,
got
how
to
many
be
boats
real.
are you making offers on? That's, we always have to think in the back of our mind. You're going to make an offer on my boat, her boat, and his boat. And then, you know, so we gingerly give them to the owner saying, here's an offer. And we hope that it's a real offer, even though it may, you know, you say, yeah, they're going to go to contract. It's not until it's a signed deal, is it, to me, a deal. And I'm not saying anybody here would do that, but a lot of brokers do that.
I do know of a broker who used to write up 2 or 3 different charter agreements, present them to the client, and then therefore when the client made the decision as to which offer was going to be the best for him, then he would sign on the dotted line. I don't think that's right of a charter broker to do that, but I know somebody that used to do that.
Right, because,
They still do it, yeah.
right, yeah.
What about options, since we're talking about offers? How about options? Might as well open that can of worms. That's what it is, of course. Tell me about how a charter manager handles options, requests for options. And do you take a deep breath? And
Yeah. Well, it again depends. If it's Christmas or something, there's times. Normally you give a time limit on an offer, on a signed contract, or on the challenge. So there's an option on Yachtfolio. Another broker comes in and said, I have someone who wants to challenge it. To me, that means that broker's client wants those dates, and we're going to have to give the one who has already the option and the time limit to say, this contract has to be signed within 12 hours, 24 hours, or it's gone, and then the next broker is moving in with their client.
But an option is issued when you send contract details to me.
Yes.
That's when the option
That's
goes
when the
out.
option
I
goes
send
on.
you the contract for review, so you know I've actually done
Exactly.
the contract.
Yes, we've agreed to go to contract. Option goes on Yachtfolio. That's an option.
Yeah.
And now if you're still doing the draft and that kind of thing, maybe there'll be longer time to challenge the option. But if the contracts are out, it's 3 days, and someone else comes in and I want to challenge that option.
But then doesn't charter broker number 1, that's already initiated the first contract, don't they have until whatever date you have agreed with the charter broker, which is, let's say it's 72 hours?
Sometimes, personally, I don't always do that. You know, some people I know do it and have a 48-hour option period.
Right.
It all depends. Each deal is individual.
So there's no.
But I will always give you the time. If a challenge comes in, I will always give you the benefit of the doubt. I think most people would give you the benefit of the doubt. To give you the time, if you're serious, if you've disappeared for 4 days, your client's disappeared for 4 days, I don't think you're too serious. If it's July in the Med, you know, someone's backing you up, you know, right behind you, then you've got, it's a lot of it's very individual.
Do you have a question?
But what about if an offer has been accepted and someone went to contract and a better offer came in? Does a charter manager then have a right to send out contract details and accept offer number 2 and have the owner sign it?
I don't think so.
That's a good question.
No, I'd be on,
There's a. Nicole, could you, yeah.
Is there money down? Because what you guys are considering an offer is a would you take.
No,
it's not an offer.
she's saying-
No,
nothing's
contracts
signed
had
and
been
there's no money.
issued.
So it's an
Contract
option.
details had gone, so it is an
To me,
option.
give them to me.
Right, so-
and then Diana comes in with offer
And then,
number 2.
yeah, and then Ann already went to contract,
so
okay?
it's an option.
So it's an option,
No,
okay?
if you
And
have
then-
a contract signed, then no,
and
it's yours.
only signed by the charter, not signed by the owner yet. And and her client wants 9 days, my client wants 11 days. As a charter manager, does the charter manager have the right to then take my contract, my charter, because it's 11 days versus Ann's 9 days?
No, because you've already sent it back to me signed. So it's already gone to the owner for signature. Because at that point, you've sent it back to me, it's signed, I've sent it to the owner.
Yeah, but let's say
It's not signed.
it's not signed by the owner yet. It's
Right,
only
but
signed
it's
by the
already
charterer.
been-
So,
But if I don't have it, it's still a would you
So
take. If I
Ann's-
have it, it's
right,
a
but Ann's
contract.
Ann's done the contract, all right, her client signed it, she's getting ready to send it back to Pat. In the meantime, I call Pat while Ann is getting ready to send it back to Pat, I call her and say, hey, I've got 11 days.
No, because you're still under option for 48 hours.
Yeah, I think it's an ethical thing, and you have an option.
Yeah,
and
you have an option
yeah.
for
I have the
48
option.
hours.
Yeah,
with
you
me,
have,
so.
Ann has the option, so.
You have the option.
Curious.
But then I would give you like 12 hours to say.
Yeah, if the owner
But
finds
backing
out.
up
Yeah,
a
give
little
you
bit.
12 hours.
But yeah, but then how does
Why-
Pat tell the owner, okay, listen, you accepted this 9-day charter, but I want you to know afterwards an 11-day charter came in.
Perhaps I don't.
Perhaps you don't.
You don't tell them.
You don't tell them.
Yeah,
don't
because
tell
owners
them.
wouldn't honor the option.
Yeah.
But backing up just a little bit, when you were saying you're presenting an offer, but there's nothing signed, there's no money in escrow, in the sales part of the business, an offer is with a contract and with a deposit. So until you have that, it's a would you take. You can go to an owner and say, would you take
I love that.
a full rate charter for 7 days and give me 10, but that's nothing more than a would you take. So if somebody comes in behind you and you don't have an option, you don't have contracts out, and they say, I'll give you 10 days, it's my obligation to take the 10 days because I haven't given you an option, you haven't sent contracts out, and it's nothing more than a would you take, and there might be a would you take on 3 other boats. So I think it's the confusion of offer versus that.
Versus option.
That's what you were saying.
That was, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I knew if I mentioned options, it would open up. It's a headache. It's a major headache in the business. I know that. Sales handles a little bit differently, but charter, it's got to be, I think, present all offers is what it comes down to, unless an option's been presented. So let's move along. Number 5 is false information provided about guests who will be aboard. Reminds me of a call I had from a famous actress one time who wanted to get Sean Combs onto a charter and wouldn't provide the information on who it was and all that, Puff Daddy. And until we insisted that they show us the manifest of passengers who are going to be on board, and we discovered who it was. And he's not the most popular charter client in the world, as we all know. So anyway, so there's false information for one reason or another, either sloppiness or they don't want you to know who will be aboard. A preference sheet and correspondence states a family of 5. Those who arrive are 1 older man and 4 young ladies.
His daughters.
And his Viagra.
His nieces.
Well, the preference sheet it says there is his daughters, yes, okay. So what happens if they come aboard with passports and they're all logged and all this? Is this worthy of cancellation based on false information provided to the boat and to the owner, effectively? Okay. Opinions?
The passports were provided in advance for this fictional family.
They come aboard with passports.
They come aboard with passports. And the owner did not have that information previously.
Right. Didn't have the information previously. So what discretion does the captain have? What latitude does the captain have to be able to cancel based on false information, especially the activities that we can be expecting or ensuing?
Well, the false information came in the form of the inquiry and in form of back and forth emails, but it's not a part of the contract. If the owner can change the crew, the client should be able to change the guests unless it's specified in the contract that Captain John will be aboard and you will have your family, your wife Mary and your sons John and Sam and so forth.
I don't think there's any grounds to really cancel the charter agreement. I mean, first of all, you don't know. Maybe they'll just spend the entire time lounging on the bunny pads on the sun deck or down in the stateroom and not do anything else. And, they might be perfect charter guests. There's until they actually do something, the charter does something or his guest does something to ruin the reputation of the boat, there's no grounds for canceling the charter.
You can't cancel the charter on that. But it's bad brokering, and I've had it happen to me, and we know brokers who do it, and in our little panel, we know brokers who do it. A broker, in fact, not from this country, and that has, it's a family charter, but it's not a family charter, and I find out after the fact that it was
what it was.
what it was, and so, and then I've heard from other managers, the same thing happened to them. So now, will we deal with this broker again? Probably not.
Okay. So then, therefore, what would you consider grounds for cancellation? Or just grounds for cancellation during the charter?
Drugs, extreme violence, damage, putting the boat in danger.
How much of that's spelled out in the contracts? I know most of it is, but how much of it? Is it all in there?
No, but the
drugs.
captain has the right, it has to go in writing, and you have to, if they say they're smoking in the master stateroom, the captain has to say no more smoking in the master stateroom, and next time you're off the boat.
Yeah.
But there's been cases we had a case of severe violence, and there wasn't going to be a letter saying, don't do this again. There was, you're off the boat. So, and there was nothing that could be.
But in the case of the severe violence, was it already documented?
Yeah, oh yeah, blood and everything. So, it was there.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
You remind me of a charter I had when I was still in the Virgin Islands, and the captain calls up and he goes like, my stewardess was cleaning the master cabin and she found bullets in the bed. What do you think I should do? I'm going like, find the gun.
Very good, Ann. Any points about charter cancellations or any of these other things, false information being provided? Cindy, you're waving at me. 3 minutes. Okay, well, let's talk about the life cycle of funding a charter, especially for the newer charter brokers that are in the room, and that your newer charter managers are in the room. Because the next one talks about chasing funds and the broker's responsibility, about deposits being received in a timely manner, personal checks are in the mail waiting to clear, and all these kind of things, balance of funds due according to the contract. So can you walk us through the life cycle of funding a charter from a charter manager's perspective?
Well, we get a fully executed contract, goes back to the broker. The broker has X amount of days, it's usually written on the contract, to get the money, to collect the money, and then forward us the net deposit, whatever it may be. And then it's the broker's responsibility to collect the money, but we're following up with the broker 30 days before the charter starts to get the balance. And
Balance, APA delivery.
APA delivery, all that.
VAT.
And then we disperse it as.
And what about the APA, though? What happens if the APA becomes depleted during the charter?
Well, it's in the contract that the captain is to go over everything with the charter client. Maybe, I always tell my captains halfway between, as the charter goes on, to go over everything. Sometimes every day, every few days, to go over everything. This is what we've spent, this is what you have left. I tell them never let anybody get off the boat owing money. Otherwise, you'll never see it, or rarely see it. And usually at that point, we get the charter broker involved with money. They need more money, they've used too much money on it, or whatever.
So ordinarily, the captain would be instructed, and so the charter client, that if the APA becomes depleted, then they're to replenish it at a certain point during the charter, midst of the charter and all that. Do you ever have situations where an owner of the yacht insists on sort of taking possession of the APA, or wanting to know how the expenses are handled, and sometimes owners will think that the APA is part of the charter income. They think of it that way, although it isn't. It's charter client's money. Well, we've had owners under charter management that insist on seeing the APA, and they want to see where the money was spent. They want to see if anything was being spent out of ship stores and all this. So do you ever have that kind of an attitude on the part of any of your owners that want to control the APA?
One or two that we have to say it's not their money, it's the client's money, and how they spend it is their deal. It's,
Any other charter managers in here that have the experience? No?
I had that experience with the charter manager.
Yeah.
The manager is not here, but their owner thought that the APA belonged to the owner, and the owner was given it because the boat was in transit down to the Caribbean, and it took months to get back the APA, months, and it was disgusting.
So I'm sorry, the owner received, as part of the advance from the boat, received the APA, or received the APA from the charter manager?
From the charter manager.
And controlled it.
And controlled it.
Yeah.
Was this a long time ago?
No, it was recent. Ooh. It was recent. But conversely, I do have a charterer who, whenever he does a charter in Europe, he will have his butler go out every day with the chef or the chief steward, stewardess, and do the shopping and everything, and you would be surprised how little APA gets spent when they do it that way. It's amazing.
Has it been your experience when there's a balance left over in the APA that it's given down to the crew, or they look to be reimbursed the charter client?
That's the gratuity question.
Gratuity equals gift. It's the charter's discretion.
Yeah.
And I think Ann's going to agree with this, that some captains and crew are over the top with a 7%, 10% gratuity, and some look at it and get insulted and will chase the client down the dock.
Well, in my experience, I try to escrow gratuity funds before the charter, because nobody likes to carry that kind of cash. And, leaving the boat, I'm going to wire the gratuity to you, Captain. That's not the best scenario. So therefore, if there's money left over in the APA, it may come back to the charter if he has fully funded a gratuity escrow. If he hasn't, or if he decides to be extra generous, it could go to the crew along with the crew gratuity that's escrowed. So it really just kind of depends, in many respects, how much is left. I mean, so I've had some charters that spend like 50%, because I always collect 30% APA. I don't collect less.
Yeah. Well, I think Diane's right. The problem occurs when it becomes an entitlement. They think of it as an entitlement or something that it's due to them, as opposed to the gift concept and all that. I am so sorry, but our 45 minutes has gone so quickly, and Cindy's really mad at me because I've run out. Pardon? One more. I know we do. But I want to thank this panel, Diane and Ann and Pat, for all of their wisdom and all their they provided and ideas they provided to us. Let's have a nice round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, for moderating.